Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu Salam ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ahdu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, lil ikwan ikhwati fi din, wa salamu ala mani taba huda, lil ikwan ikhwati fi Africa, Europa, America, Caribbean, or Kuli Makan. Halim wa salim bikum. My dear brothers and sisters, today, short notice as usual for me. And I'm covering another part of the Sahel crisis and what this entails, because this is a part here that's very intriguing. There's some models that we should be using to I guess what we say, models that could be used to help us to find peace in the region. Because this particular country is very quiet, considering all the killing and marauding and ethnic strife that is going on all around it. But this particular state is very quiet. But there's an underlying current that's there. And it's a big underlying current. It's like a riptide underneath the ocean top shores, the riptide, where it'll take you and bring you out. This is what this is. There's something that's lurking there that is a monster. But they have been able to keep it at bay, to their credit. And when we look at this, bring you a map here, okay, in English here first, give me this English. When you look at here, the map over to your left side, you see Mauritania, and then you see right above it to the left-hand corner, you see Maghreb, Morocco in English. And they are at the southern, well, they're at the southwest portion of Mauritania. And remember something, brothers and sisters, this area mass that we know now today as Algeria, Mali, Mauritania, there was no such thing before the colonial period. It was all considered under Maghreb, even though Mauritania had a name of Shankiti as the area that it was known for. But remember something, Mauritania is still considered to be part of West Africa. It's not North Africa. Okay, you got to remember that. Let me see who we got there. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother Mustafa. And so we have a very interesting area here that we're going to discuss. Now, let's look at something here. Mauritania, look at the name, Moors. Remember the Moors? Remember I was talking about that here about a month and a half ago about the Andalus. The interconnection between Mali and Mauritania is very important. And again, remember something, brothers and sisters, before the colonial period, there was no such thing as Algeria. There was no such thing as Mali. There was no such thing as Mauritania. These were created by the colonial powers in order to break up empires, especially Islamic empires, and to bring in a false nationalism. And it worked. As you see today, we still have closed borders. We're not to be trusted. My brother who's living in Algeria, he's related to me, but I'm supposed to consider him to be an enemy, which, the government is having its battles, as you heard of Algeria and Morocco, or been having at it for a long time. And they are very, very close cousins. Okay. I mean, there's no difference. We speak the same language, which is a Darija, which we speak this. It's a Arabic, a form of Arabic. They call it Darija. Very difficult. Very difficult. I can speak some of the words. I understand it better than to speak it. So when we look at Mauritania, brothers and sisters, they've done something that we all should admire. You see Mali, you see Niger, you see Burkina Faso, Nigeria, you see Chad, Sudan as we see today, Ethiopia, we see Eritrea, Somalia. All these areas are under fire. Okay, bottom line, killing, strife happening all over the place. But Mauritania is quiet, very quiet. And so we have to look at this and we have to ask why this is the case. And let me get this out. So why is this country so quiet? What makes this state unpleasing to the Mujahideen groups? Remember what I said. Now, you remember something early 2000, about 2009, 2010, they start to have some attacks from the AQ, okay, of Africa. And they did some damage from about 2009 to about 2013, but they quelled it. After that, it's been, little skirmishes here and there, but it's been relatively quiet. And so the Mauritania isn't Sharia compliant. It relies heavily on Western powers and ECOWAS cooperation to fight against the Mujahideen. Now, you say, well, yeah, it's confusing. You said Mujahideen. They're there, but they're quiet. They're quiet. The Mujahideen groups are present, the big one. The AQ is still present, but they don't possess the potential of harm that this group here does. Kitab, Musina, you've been hearing me talk for the last couple of weeks. They're also known as Messina Liberation Front, but my understanding is there were some fractions that they fragmented into different groups. One kept Messina group and the other one came with the Liberation Front. Then they even have another name for them. But small, and then they have small elements and Sardine, okay? And Mali and Mauritania are intertwined because of the three racial groups. You have the Afro-Arabs, you have the Afro-Tuareg, Amazigh, you have the Fulani, you have the Bambara, and you have the Wolof, all of them there. Now remember something, brothers and sisters. Remember, we talked about Andalus. Now I'm bringing you to the area that was confusing to a lot of people because I got a lot of heat from a lot of people who were very angry. These are black folk who said, no, the Fulani, the Bambara, the Wolof, so forth and so on. No one ever went up to the north. That's not the case, brothers and sisters, because when I start to go into the second part, as I start going into the history, I will tie that loose ends up. Because let me tell you something, it's a rich history, very interesting history in Mauritania, which is interlinked with Morocco, as we know today, and Mali, very intertwined. And we also, I'll go into the parts of the greatness of the Fulani emirates and sultanates that they had, running from the 1300s all the way to the 1800s till it was finally, defeated out. So I'll get into that in the second segment of this, because it's important, brothers and sisters, that you understand those, especially African Americans, Africans alike, but in particular the Fulani people, because your history's been obscured. You don't know what is what anymore, because all we hear about now is bandits, and all we hear about is Mujahideen groups and herdsmen and so forth and so on, killing somebody. That's what we get. And when you talk about the history, nobody wants to talk about our history as though we don't have a history. Only history we have is just walking up and down through the Sahara with cattle. It's not the case. It's not the case. We have a real long history. I told you, stretching back to the 700s. Back to the 700s. See, so I will get into this portion at another segment, because I wanted to tie in some loose ends, because I didn't get deep into it the first time when I talked about Andalus, how we went into Andalus and what happened in Andalus. I covered that deeply. And a lot of people supported me on that, but we had others who didn't support that. They were so convinced. They said the Fulani never went in that direction, which is incredible. But that's another story altogether. The Tuareg Afro Amazigh Arab. because of the language speak, I will go by what the Prophet ﷺ has defined Arab, not what the Arab League says, not what the U.S. says, or some other people say, because people have different definitions. You can be Arab if you're white and you speak Arabic. If you're black and you speak Arabic, then you're not really Arab. I'm not going to get into that because it's not true. The Prophet ﷺ did not put a designation on the color by the tongue. He said if you spoke Arabic, this is part of the culture, part of the Islamic culture, then you are Arab. In the story. And that's what I go by. So even though somebody's cold black in color, those people are classified as Arabs in Islamic circles. Okay, now here's the interesting part about Mauritania. The Fulani are not really radicalized as in the other Sahel states. It's not facing some of the traditional grievances between herders and farmers, and there's a reason for that. We have some circles where the Mauritanian government, realizing that it could go to war with the Mujahideen groups, the Messina group in particular, but they would lose out. They decided to barter with them from one Muslim to another. And it's been quiet ever since. They exist. They have areas in the southern part of Mauritania. It's common knowledge. They have Islamic schools. They're some of the most famous schools, Islamic schools in the world are that still there in Mauritania. They run a Malazma system. I don't want to get deep in that because it's Islamic, essentially saying students come from everywhere and they live with the scholar and they learn from him. Everybody eats together, everybody stays together, classroom together, so forth and so on. And this system is still prevalent, but I heard they start to take it out. This system is still going there. We produce scholars out there, those who we call Hafiz in Quran, those who memorize the Quran. It's a very, very learned school there where you learn Arabic language and you learn it correctly. The real classical Arabic, Quranic Arabic, you would learn it there in these particular schools. This is in Mauritania. It's high in academics, Islamic academics. But they did something that the others, Nigeria, as you heard Sheikh Islams have said, and politicians have said, they're bent on killing. And you see, they got a full-fledged jihad in Nigeria because even though the Sheikh Islams came to them and told the government, look, don't do this, because they're getting money from the Americans, as you heard, to designate you, me, anyone who's flying to be terrorists and should be killed, so that money start pouring in. And now they got a full-fledged, big-time jihad in Nigeria, which they won't be able to quell. And the killings are going off the chart. Mauritania, they didn't listen to what everybody told them to do. They told them to go and do this and that. They didn't do that. They bartered with them. So they exist in the south of Mauritania, and they remain quiet because nobody's challenging them. And there's an agreement. We don't know how this agreement is going to last, but they're not going to take over the country, which they could. They possibly could, brothers and sisters. It's a possibility they could if they decide to call jihad, which one of the groups has called for jihad, but not in Mauritania, so to speak. They have been negotiable and doesn't feel any. They don't have roving, militias as they do everywhere else running through the Sahel. That's the other thing too. So you don't have a band of maniacs coming through the villages of the Futafula and killing them and their children and antecedents. No, they don't have that. So the Fulani is going from place to place. And secondly, the terrain is very, very harsh in Mauritania. And so it's not conducive to a lot of activity. It's very, very difficult. And they don't have these vigilante organizations either. And they don't have the squabbles between our brothers, the herders, and our Afro-Otter brothers and our Afro-Tuareg brothers, okay, and in conflicts over land. They don't have that. So it's quiet. Okay, they are guilty as most African states. The security funds come from them, okay? But it doesn't reach, and again, we have the same problem. They have security forces, but they're poorly trained. And in the volatile areas that I'm talking in the South, again, they don't have enough troops and equipment to handle the Mujahideen if they decide to strike. They don't. And leaving Mauritania in a vulnerable state, the state understands this. This is why they bartered with them, and that's why it's still quiet all these years. And they can learn from them, because the Fulani have a claim in the central to the south portion of Mauritania. The Afro-Arabs have a claim. The Afro-Tuaregs have a claim of Mauritania as well. See, so there's no argument talking about, well, you Fulani, you don't belong here. No. The history is tied into that. And let's go back to something here, brothers and sisters. It's not off topic. You look at Mauritania. What's next to it? Morocco, isn't it? Remember, I had our brothers and sisters tell us 1,000 times that no Moroccan is mixed with Fulani. Now, wait a minute. You see the southwest central portion and the south is filled with Fulani people. Look at where Morocco is. There was no borders in those days. They went back and forth and marriage. That's how I told you before, my amalgamation. I'm Fulani and Amazigh. So this premise, again, put it out of your mind, because people want to make Mauritania way out in left field somewhere. It's there. There's Morocco right there. If you look at Morocco, then you go north. Where is that? Andalus, modern day Spain is there. See, so I wanted to make that point, brothers and sisters, because to show you Mauritania is there. It's right next to Morocco. And the Fulani have been there for thousands of years. The greatest challenge to them, now we get into it, is Kitab Messina. Remember, I've been talking about them for weeks. They had called for a jihad in Mali because what has happened to them, the governments keep changing. I don't know which is which now. They have a new junta in there now in Mali. They keep overthrowing under the democratic ways and means, and it doesn't work. And they duped the Fulani groups and they raided them. And then they assisted militias and everything else to go after the Fulani people. Because you have to ask the question, who presents the greatest challenge in the Sahel? The Afro-Tuaregs? The Afro-Arabs? The Bambara? The Wolof? The Jolof? No, the Fulani. This is why, this one reason is because the Western powers want us out of the way. And we present a direct affront to their programs and so forth. This is why they designate all of us as terrorists, because the Western powers, namely the United States, know the history of the Fulani better than Fulanis, because they have the history there. They have pictures, drawings, they have stuff way back. They analyze. United States is not stupid. It's not a stupid country. They hire the brightest people. They put them in the governments to do analysis like this. They have access to a lot of data. They know who the greatest threats are. This is why they need the suppression and the genocidal removal of the Fulani. Because the Fulani now, because they haven't made them controllers, you see what has happened. You got a big jihad going across the Sahel, and the Fulani are knee deep in it. So, but in Mauritania per se, they don't field enough fighters, but that can be remedied by call of jihad. This is the thing about in Islam. You don't have the warriors, so you call for jihad. Then these people, the Fulani, remember reciprocity. I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. We're noted for that. They'll start to come. And we know that because we see Nigeria make complaints about fighters being detained, fighters arrested, fighters jailed, fighters were killed, and they came from various locations. The answer, jihad. See? So even though they may not have enough, Kitab Hussein may not have enough in Mauritania per se, but I'll call it jihad will remedy that very quickly, because next door to Mauritania is Mali, where Kitab Hussein is hanging right now. And there's rumblings of them calling for jihad. And this sort have called in, and you remember there was an interview by the leader, I don't want to give his name, who said that they had received fighters even from Nigeria and from Chad and maybe even from western part of Sudan. They came to answer the call, but many of them had to leave because of what has happened, especially in Nigeria, where the fighting is going on between the Yoruba and the Igbo versus the Tib versus the Fulani. So they had to go back to protect their communities. So they had already answered the call. There are reports that Kitab Hussein is calling for the recreation of the Messina Fula Empire. Brothers and sisters, I want to get into that. I'm going to save that for another section, but I want you to think about this. You heard me say for weeks, I've angered many, even Fulani, which I don't understand. I told you I had one of our sisters write me, and she was very belligerent, as though I had almost did something to her, where she talked about this fact that I shouldn't talk about the Fulani because since her and her family are not doing anything in Gambia and Senegal, she said there's no other trouble anywhere else. She must be living in a vacuum, because in Senegal right now, I just talked about Senegal. They're in deep, and I've seen reports today, they're in deep, deep water because of this young brother that they arrested and convicted of a trumped up charges. See, this is why I say, brothers and sisters, our Fulani brothers and sisters, wherever you may be, you get your education. Don't be limited to what someone tells you. Because remember before I told you weeks, I had a run-in with one sister who told me, if the Fulani are not in Senegal or some parts of Mali and going down to Guinea, then they can't be Fulani. Don't listen to this, brothers and sisters, as I keep telling you before, because how about our brothers who are in Nigeria? You're going to try to tell them they're not Fulani? Come on now. Those in Chad, they're not Fulani. In Niger, they're Fulani. That's why I said don't listen to that. We are everywhere. As you see my map every week, I've been showing you we're everywhere. We're far down even to Mozambique, to the southeast. We're there as well. But the Messina group is pushing towards calling for the jihad to create the old Messina Fulani Empire. Brothers and sisters, if you know about this period of time, remember, you've been hearing me. I've been leading you up to this for weeks. From the 1300s, you've been hearing me say, from the 1300s into the 1800s to part of the 1900s, the Fula jihad has been very, very strong. They've had Emirates, then they were defeated. They came back and defeated that group. They had other Emirates in another area around the same thing. They ran it. They have many things. I've uncovered a lot of stuff that help us as Fula people, because we have names that we use. And I've uncovered these names and found the significance of them. We use those names, the Fulani, we use these names. And I'll get into that in another segment, because I want to get you thinking about Mauritania, why it's so quiet. But underneath, I told you right now, it's smoldering. And maybe some gasoline poured on it and it could explode. But the Mauritanian government is wise. They don't mess with them. Their security forces don't mess with them. They don't allow militias to gather, even though the Americans are trying to push and the French trying to push for somebody to go to take out, because I feel in my heart, and from everything I've read and all the intelligence I got, the American government has a hard-on for Fulani people. and they want them removed. And they need black faces to do it, like you see in Nigeria today. You got politicians talking very irresponsible. And when you go talk about you want somebody killed, or you advocating that they be taken on and eliminated on TV, and then you expect the Fulani to stay quiet, they're not. And this is why you have problems, like in Zafara, okay, in particular. This is why you have problems like this. Mauritania didn't follow that lead. They went and negotiated with the Mujahideen, and they're quiet down there. They let the schools flourish down south. And no one's leaving from Mauritania per se, okay, the Fulani, jumping into jihad in Nigeria, okay? There's very few, if any, because they live in peace, they graze, they're not having any problems. They have schools, they have great Islamic schools down to the south. So the Fulani have everything they want. I'm not saying it's a utopia, that's not what I mean. But this Messina Fulani Empire is something. And they had different names. I'll give you some of the names to give you a precursor to this. The Fulani people, brothers and sisters, okay, yes, I'm Fulani, but I'm a Muslim. I have to talk, good about something. And when we're wrong, I have to, as a Muslim, even against myself, I have to talk. But I must say, unequivocally, brothers and sisters, that my Fulani brothers and sisters have been off the charts since the 700s. Their jihad in Islamic education, Tarbiyah Islamiyah is what we call that, has been off the charts. And what we have done in these empires have been off the charts. This is why I can proudly say that I'm Fula because I see this history. We were not just herding cattle and that's all illiterate. No, the Fulani people are a very, very, very lucrative part of the ecosystem, so to speak, of Africa. And we have to understand that. When the Fulani are up in arms, the continent basically is up in arms. When everything is quiet, when they're quiet, the continent seems to be quiet because we are the biggest group everywhere in Africa. When we start trouble over here, there's trouble elsewhere. See? So some of the names of the Dina Messina is one of the names they use for the empires. I'm gonna get into that at another time, brothers and sisters. At another time, because I want to really concentrate on something about the history and their names, brothers and sisters, that I uncovered. These names, again, prove something about the connection between us in Morocco and Mauritania and Mali to Sudan. That's right. And in Somalia as well, in Eritrea, Djibouti, all these areas. There's names that are germane to the Fulani people that maybe the Fulani people don't know about, but I've uncovered these names. Sinsei Jihad State is another they call the Messina Fula Empire. Now, if the Europeans are calling this they call it a jihad state, that brought fear because they talk a lot about this empire. This stretched again, brothers and sisters, from the 1300s to the 1800s, intermixing with those empires that came, like the Mali Empire, and so forth and so on. Okay, they start to intermix, and with the sultanates of Maghreb, they start to intermix with that, and then they come to the forefront. This is what happened here. I don't like to use empire because empire is an American term, and we're Muslims. Okay, and in our languages, we should not use this word empire. I don't like that. It's either a sultanate, okay, or it's an emirate. The emirate is because of why? The emirate is because you fought in jihad, you took over an area, and then the emir, who was the emir, right, who now is taking charge of the area conquered, emirate, after the emir, right? Then you have the sultanate. The sultanate is you have a area, yes, but you have a person nominated to be controller of that area, a sultanate. The emirate can turn into a sultanate after a period of time, say that the emir who was in this jihad, who took over an area, say he took over Mali, he was in control. But say he died, and then they have, again, the populace come under the Sahel law, and the populace nominated, say, for instance, I'm saying just hypothetical, so you can understand it. Say, they say, okay, we want Yahya Shabaka now to be the sultan. Now we entered into a sultanate. That's the difference, brothers and sisters, in that. The historians are well aware, and this is why they call it a full-bay jihad state, because it was full of jihad, brothers and sisters. Remember what I told last week? I know some people were very angry at my talk last week. And I don't understand black folk, to be honest. A lot of times I don't understand us. I give it to you straight about how black people are, and I have people talk against that. Other black folk, they didn't like it. See, now when I go talk about, yeah, we should go kiss boots and stuff, then I don't get nothing to talk back. But the minute I talk about our prowess in fighting, about how we don't put up with anything, suddenly I get backlash from this. But there could be Tubob who's portraying themselves to be black folk. It could be that. But I got backlash. I don't care. I laid it out to you. I gave the facts, and I laid it out. So this area, brothers and sisters, the Songhai Empire also, Morocco has something to do with this. We had the Bambara Empire. All this was intermixed in these 1300s to the 1800s. And it's very, very interesting. And I'm going to get into that at another segment. The Messina Empire was founded by the Futufula people. And the early 1400s, but it was present in the 1300s, but it became more prominent in the 1400s. And it was on and off ruling from central Mali, southern Mauritania, to Futa Toro, Futa Jela. These rulers tagged themselves as Sheikh. This is the Fulani. So the rulers didn't adopt some of the names that we know today. They adopted this name. You know why? Because most of the rulers were very, very versed in Islamic law. They were not ignorant. So they were actually scholars themselves. And I have a whole list of these rulers. And this is the title that was given to them once they took over the empire. Brothers and sisters, we have an illustrious history. It's something. If you go to study it and you take the time to study it, brothers and sisters, we have a lot to be proud of, any African period. Because these sultanates and emirates that developed delineate that we weren't stupid. I read as a boy, and I remember, I'll never forget this. I've told this many times. I was 5 years old. I picked up a book, had this book, whatever, the teacher, and it showed a black man, like in a rainforest, hovered up in a tree with a banana in his damn mouth. Excuse my French. And the caption had it that it took the Europeans to come to us in order for them, so we'll move out from the trees to the land. This is how strong the racism was in those days. And they have books backing up their play. How is that to be? Because the Europeans did not come on the scene until the first Europeans in the West Africa were not seen until about the 1400s. So how do they know that we were jumping out of trees in the 700s? You see, if you look, that's why I say, brothers and sisters, always get your history down. You can always debunk the racist Tubob. They weren't present in the 700s. We were. This is our country. This is our land. We were present. They weren't. They didn't come onto the scene until the 1400s when they began to Remember, the Portuguese came around the coast and they began to take African slaves. They were taking slaves already in Morocco. See, so I'm just trying to make a point to you, is to show you that we had scholarship, big time scholarship. This Messina Empire influenced even our great Sheikh Islam Deluxe, Mujahid Deluxe, Usman Dan Fodio, and his sultanate that he had. It influenced them as well. It's recognized as a jihad state. When we put this in this sense, remember something, brothers and sisters, don't misread and misuse jihad. When we talk about jihad state here, we're not talking about the stuff we have today where we have wanton murder, killing, and kidnapping. That's not jihad. Here, the areas, because they were trying to bring the right Islam, they fought according, they were staunch fundamentalist Muslims. And you see what they did. They created an active education system. This is the Fulani. Building of madrasas, Islamic schools, architect. They were doing a lot of things, brothers and sisters, from this time. In this area of that we know today, Mauritania, Mali, and so forth and so on. Building of masajids. They have masjids all over, and beautiful masjids. And they were noted for their strict Islamic accordance. If you have strict Islamic accordance, brothers and sisters, there's no bandits. I'm going to tell you that now. There's no marauders, there's no kidnappers, and there's no muharaba. When you have strict Islamic law, it's not tolerant. If you read our history and our law, the muharaba, those who are doing stuff now, even though the judge would have to determine why the people are kidnapping, they have to determine, because the judge, we just can't go and slay them. But the muharaba in history found guilty. The Prophet ﷺ gave us example, and I told you one time in one class about this. It was harsh, because under strict Islamic accordance, there's no kidnapping, brothers and sisters, especially of other Muslims. See, this is why I keep telling you right now. Everybody keep talking about democratic ways and means. Democratic ways and means is only for those up at the top here to get rich, and all of us down here, we suffer. And for us to be governed by the colonial powers. Strict Islamic accordance will stop all this banditry. It will stop a lot of other stuff too. The militias, all this stuff will be stopped, because you go to court for this. You get caught, and if you're caught, you there's, according to with the Qadi, this is a judge. He's the Islamic Sharia court judge, versed in the Quran. He's hafiz in the Quran and in the law. Okay, the Sharia law. So they would have to make determination about these muharaba, who's kidnapping, robbing people in the open. Okay, they would have to determine that. This is how our law really works. That's why the Americans don't want it. They want democratic ways and means, because why? Their industries make money off us when we go in jihad, like they're doing now. And the government and the hypocrites are making a lot of money off us, because when they go on TV to advocate the killing of Fulani, the money pours in. See, it's all a big, nasty game. But the Messina empires were built and noted for education, for building schools, building the masajids, noted for strict Islamic accordance and guidance, per the Quran and the Sunnah. Here is the thing, brothers and sisters, that remember, you've been hearing me talk about this. I'm leading you to what I was trying to get you to see. Under this Messina group and all of these sultans and stuff, they had established a code of regulating cattle herding and farmland. That's why it's been quiet for all these centuries. Something disturbed that, didn't it? Because it is erupted. But when the states were under Islamic law, there was laws regulating this. And this is why the communities worked hand in hand. The farmers had their thing. If they were violated, there was a Sharia court for grievance. There was no militias coming in to chop off the heads of Fulani herdsmen or anything like this. No, they didn't have that. The Sharia court sent out the Hezbollah police. Hezbollah police is the police who enforce the Sharia for the state. They would go to do the investigation, bring their finding to the judge. He would order who's going to be arrested and so forth and so on. And he, according to, it could be compensation or whatever, okay, imprisonment. But this is how the Islamic system works. But they established a code and stuff that worked for centuries. It stayed until the modern Muslims that we see today got a hold of this and destroyed this agreement. And this is the trouble we have all through the Sahel today, because they're not practitioners of the Islamic law I'm talking about now. They are enforcing the laws of the Tubab governments. And this is why we have the problem. See? So they have been subject to conquering Islamic rulers. The Messina group, brothers and sisters, as you heard me say, on and off. The Tuareg, they build a power, and then they have Mali Empire came in. They took over. There was the Bambara. The Bambara had an empire. They defeated the Messina group, but then the Messina group came back to defeat them again. So from 1300 to the late 1800s, you have back and forth, as you heard me say, of of the Messina emirates and sultanates. The Songhai Islamic State. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm going to get in a little bit of this now, and I'll be closing here. The Saadi, remember you heard me talk about this is part of my heritage. You see the word here, Saadi? The Saadi, the Sultanate of Morocco. It came from where, brothers and sisters? Huh? Where did it come from? Let's look at that. Where did it come from? It came from the Mauritania, Mali region into Morocco. That's why I explained to you, brothers and sisters, that the Moroccans, a lot have Fulani heritage because of this. And their names that I will get into later talking about this. Saadi is another name that I believe it comes out of Messina Fulfulde language. And I have been doing research because this name Saadi is not Moroccan. It's not Moroccan, brothers and sisters. It's not. It's not Moroccan. This is why when you have racist, even among my brothers here in Morocco, we have some that are very racist because they've been around the Tubab. Tubab been brainwashing them, believing that they're even white. The Tubab themselves, they think that they're Tubab, unfortunately. And so they paint every stroke of everybody, even Yusuf Josephine, Rahim Allah, and the Muhrabitun, they paint them as pencil neck white men out of their racism. But when I go to them, when I hear this kind of talk, I ask them, I said, explain to me about Saadi. Where did this come from? They don't have a name. They don't have an answer for it because it's not Amazigh and it's not actually Arabic either. Because it came from Mauritania region and the Mali region. From who? I believe from the Messina, Fulfulde dialect of our language. Because there's another name, I'll get into that's similar to this. And it has a meaning, very interesting, that our people were very clever when they used language and they designated names. Very, very clever. The Fola people, very clever. And they had these titles and so forth, very, very clever. So then, like I say, the Saadi Moroccan Sultanate was governing this area, and they defeated the Messina Empire again, and they ruled. And then Messina came back powerful again, and then finally he was defeated by our other brother Omar Tal. Everybody knows about him, Mujahid Deluxe of the Hapapular, who are our brothers. They're Fulani. See, so this is a history, brothers and sisters, that we could do for weeks. But I know you don't have patience for that. because we should understand. Reason why I like to talk about the history, because we have so much negativity that's in front of us today, don't we? You don't see nothing positive about the Fulani at all, nothing positive. As far as everybody knows, the only thing we've done is walk up and down the Sahara with the cattle, and that's it. The narrative been put on us is that we do two things. One, herd cattle, and we kill. I want to show you that we were masterminds of great, powerful sultanates and emirates. We were masterminds to help to open up modern day Spain, we call Andalus. We were there. We ran the sultanates. The sultanates were run from the region, the Mauritania and Mali region. They originated from Murabitun, Wahidun, right? The Sadi, who was in my heritage, all of them came from this southern region. See, so brothers and sisters, that's why I said, I give you this. For the Fulani people who don't like to hear about this, that's up to you, brothers and sisters. I'm not stopping you. I'm going to talk about our people and our history. I'm going to talk because we should talk about that to learn in order for us to understand it, all Africans, because we're all taking a beating. And when you start to learn about this type of stuff that went on here, the agriculture, I want to get in that another time. Boy, I'm going to tell you something. They made money off agriculture. It was ingenious as some of what they had done. Very ingenious. We should go back to doing things like this. That's why the West is adamant. Don't bring the Islamic system back in, because we were rich and powerful and wealthy. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with so much. He gave us so much knowledge, medicine, and so forth, agriculture. Let me give you one, and I'll break off of this. I'm close to closing here. You know, the Murabitun, they came in the 10th century, and I told you, they went into the south, the Mauritania region, they went in the south there, and they're mixed with the Fulani people, the Tuareg, mostly black folk, Afro-Arabs, Afro-Tuareg, black people, Bambara, there were Wolof in the Murabitun, there was Sinike, there was many different groups part of Murabitun. That's why they went in there and kicked butt in Andalus again. And you heard me talk last week about the prowess of the black man. The Spaniards were already aware of them because they already had their butts kicked back, remember, in the 7-11. So they were already acquainted with us. We came back again to take back the country back in the 1000s. And we had the same formula again. Very strong, tall, long-muscled brothers. Some of them, they say, were black as the night, as you heard me prove that, give you the evidence that the European scholar who witnessed the battle, he got a look at the picture of them and he described them. We have Portuguese also who drew pictures of these groups, and they showed these brothers tall, long arms and muscles, okay, with turbans, and they wore face veils, as you see me wear, before too, face veils, like this. They wore those things way back. This is nothing new. We've been doing this. Our people have been doing this since the 700s. It was reported. See, so, brothers and sisters, I'm gonna tell you something. We have some kind of history. We have some type of history that is something. Now, the saga of the historical Messina Islamic states. So in essence, Mauritania and Mali are heavily linked because they are. The artificial borders created by the Tuba colonials were designed to create false nationalism. They broke up the Fula people, those in Mauritania and those in Mali, those in southern Morocco. You see, this is by design, brothers and sisters. This is by design. And so they gave this false nationalism, but it's starting to change. Now, I'll get to this one part here, and then we will close out. Let's see where we at here. I'm trying to find that. Try to find this map of what is happening now, brothers and sisters. And I'll acknowledge my brothers here and sisters here in the comment section here. Be patient, my brothers and sisters. Be patient here. I want to make this point. Here we have Mali and Mauritania. If you look over to your left in the green, you see the southern central part of Mauritania, and you look above there, Al-Maghrib means Morocco. You have the red, who are the what? Afro-Tuareg. Then you have the blue, and then the blue is the Messina group that we're talking about. Remember the history behind them. The red here is the Ansar Deen, who the Afro-Arabs. So you have the yellow, you have the Afro-Tuaregs, who's the Azawad. Ansar Deen is red, they're the Afro-Arabs. You have Fulani mixed with that, brothers and sisters. It's not all pure Afro-Arabs. You have Fulani mixed in it as well. The green portion here is a splinter group of the Messina group who are lingering in Mauritania as we speak right now. And this is why I said we have something dangerous that's brewing. Last week, I gave you some indications. If the Messina, the Amir of the Messina group now has talked about he can't call a big jihad because many of the Mujahideen went back into Nigeria and back into Niger and Burkina Faso to protect their communities. So they're kind of weakened now. But they're going to call for a jihad maybe in a year, maybe 2 years. Once they quell some of the other stuff, they'll be back. And it's going to be business, brothers and sisters. That red, blue, and green will be the new Messina Empire. Fulani, not Empire, Emirate. This is what they're advocating. This is what may transpire, brothers and sisters. That's why I say this thing is smoldering. Mauritania knows that. This is why they negotiate, and it's quiet there. Not like the other states where they say, I want Fulani blood, and they go kill the Fulani. And now what has happened? They got a full-fledged jihad. Mauritania didn't do that. They went and bartered with the brothers and asked them, look, we all can live in, you take the southern part, meaning there's no lawlessness. They're living under the Sharia in the south, okay? Now, and so it's not lawlessness. It's not Muharaba going all over the place. None of that. Now, in Mauritania, I will say this too, and I'll close on this. We're not talking about some of the social problems that exist in Mauritania, like slavery, and they got a caste system and so forth. I don't want to get into that because there's no African state that don't have some kind of caste system of some sort. All of us have that. See, so I won't get into that because that's not the crux of what's happening here. The crux is what is happening here. It's not the slavery that's going on, which is against Islamic law. The crux of this, which will blow up everything, is the Messina group. If the Messina group explodes, we're not going to be talking about slavery. You're going to be talking about a full-fledged jihad, and it's going to be right on the southern tip of Morocco. And no doubt, our government here in Morocco is well aware of that. That's why I told you last week, everybody's watching this area closely. Everybody's watching Sudan very closely to see what happens. Let me acknowledge here some of my brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother Marcus. Yeah, okay. Oh, you from Limited, Texas, okay. Okay, Longhorn State. We need to make an emirate here too. Yeah, brother, that'd be something. I remember I told you, I was saying to the brothers, maybe you guys carve out the southern states to make the South into some kind of black emirate of some sort where black folk can go and live in peace without being hunted down like animals, like they are in the Midwest and the East and the West. Who else we got here? Excuse me here. But, we have massages. You have knowledge. When you have massages, yes. When the massages are going good, knowledge is being disseminated. When the massages this is our places of worship. When they are suppressed, knowledge is suppressed, and this is one of the aims of the disbelievers is to make the masjids into places where they are no knowledge. You just come in, you make your prayer, and you leave. This is what they push for, but this is not the sunnah. And yeah, you said about the here, yes, yes, Usman Defo, yes, and the Fulbi did this is his name, yes. In Arabic, he's known as Uthman Dan Fudi in the Arabic language. That's what the Arab Afro-Arab historians know him by that name. Okay, and with books, there's some books out. I'll get back with you on this. There's some books out. I can't remember all their names, but you have to be very careful on what you read because there's Christian groups now, and I think you named off one of the Christian groups, Joshua, something like this. They are making headway in Muslim states now, trying to take the brothers away from Islam and making them into mushrikeen, believing into the Trinity. They want to take them away from Tawheed and bring them to where they'll start donning white Jesus alayhi, and they're slick in their how they are doing it because they're not talking against Islam, but what they do is they use a soft approach to get the brothers to come to Christianity, and but they're not being really successful. To be honest with you, brothers and sisters, they're not really successful. I would have to get back to you on the books because I'm gonna have to sanitize some of these because some of the books are not going to give you the good stuff that we need. And I want to make a point about something, brothers and sisters, too. Okay, I want to make a good point about something. You see this picture, this marquee that I brought up. Have you noticed something from running from Senegal, even from southern part of Morocco, across the belt? The brothers dress primarily the same, and they look the same. Stretching all the way from southern part of Morocco down across Mauritania, northern Senegal across. If we look at a map again, and you see this, these brothers here are not in Sudan. These brothers here are not in Mali. They're not northern Nigeria either. They're in western part of Ethiopia. Remember I talked about the Hummer people? Remember I told you they mixed with the Fulani? These are them here. And the Christians are working on them as we speak to bring them, the Tuba Christians are working to bring them from Islam. And they said they have been successful in some. I don't know about the proof on that. I don't know. But I want to make a point about that because the brothers from all these regions have the same look. They're not different, especially when they wear the native dress that's pertinent for the desert climate. They all have turbans. They have long flowing robes because so the air can come through them, and then also keeps you warmer because the desert get cold, brothers and sisters. Believe me, I know. I was in the Sahara, and let me tell you something. It gets cold there because there's no area to keep the heat, and the heat evaporates, and it gets very chilly, very, very chilly. Some years it even snows. And you look, here are the Hummer people that's in Sudan. This again, you see the similarities again of the brothers and how they operate, and how we have the same look. This is why when you see a brother from western part of Ethiopia and you marry him up with a Afro-Tuareg or Afro-Arab or Fulani brother, you're not going to know until he speaks that he's from that region because they look almost identical. And they have a culture that's of the Sahara. They all have this. This is what is unique about African people. See, this is unique about us, brothers and sisters, very unique. And so you saw the pictures there. You can't tell. You look at those guys there, you can't tell if they're Tuareg over in Mauritania or Mali or southern part of Morocco, because we have brothers still dressed like this in the Sahara. I know, I'm down there. I went down there. When I went down there, it was a blast, brothers and sisters. Because the brothers, I had one brother who was herding a camel. He couldn't keep his eyes. And my wife was telling him, hey, he was really from America. He didn't want, he didn't want to believe it. He kept watching me. I have pictures of me and him taken together next to camels. He couldn't believe it. He was just astonished. See, and at that time, I didn't know I was full of. I didn't know because I didn't have DNA. This is years back, about 6-7 years ago, when I seen this brother in the desert. And we went there and I got camel milk, delicious milk. Very nutritious, very delicious. And we sit there and we drink. And my wife told him, because I could speak Arabic, but not this type of Arabic. My wife could speak it. So he almost dropped the bottle when he heard I was an American. He just could not believe it. But because he said, no, you look like these people over here. He was talking about the Fulani people. He was talking about the Fulani people. I didn't know at that time I didn't know I was that. I didn't know. But he's mentioned about this because he's talking about the people over here, they're Fulani. See? So he said, no, he's not American, he's Fulani. He's from these people here. But I did not have no DNA, so I didn't know how to answer that question. But I wanted to bring those points up to you, brothers and sisters, because this history ours and many of us look alike, as I told you before. You bring the brothers here, I walk the streets. The people who know me now know originally from America, but they don't consider me American. They don't consider me that. See, and even when I meet some other brothers from the South, they don't consider me American. When I had a funny joke, and I close here. I was in a cab one day with this one brother, and he saw me. He was black. He was talking to me. So he kept looking at me, and he seen me in the email and everything. So he asked me a question. He said, where are you? So I told him, I said, look, because now I have my DNA. He said, yeah, you forget about the American part, because he said, there's nothing American about you. He said, you are Fulani Sudani. That's what he said to me. He said, don't mention this part about the American, because the American is not you. What you are, you're African. You're Fulani Sudani. That's what he was telling me. So I was giving you that joke to tell you how the people view me. They don't call me Tubab. I've never had anybody call me Tubab since I've been here, because not because of color, of attitude and everything. They regard me as, they call me Afro-Arab here as well, because I speak Arabic language. So I read it, write it, and speak it. So they call me Afro-Arab as well. This is an indication for our African Americans who come over to Africa, because when you begin to adapt to be African, they will see you as that. If you come in and you acting like American, they could consider you as American and consider you Tubab. I was just trying to make that point. This is the point we have, because many African Americans are very upset, even though some of them are 4 times darker than me. They said they call me Tubab. It's not the color, brothers and sisters. It's the attitude and the way you handle yourself here in Africa. If you handle yourself like you're European, Tubab, you're going to be regarded as that, regardless of your skin color. Just to make a difference, it's not the skin color. It's the attitude. It's the attitude, brothers and sisters. Okay? That's the key for your success here, is you to adopt being who you are. That's why I keep pushing. If you find out you Hausa, you promote that. You take it and you adopt it and you run with it. If you Fulani, you take and get the history, and they will accept you for that if you adopt it truly in your heart. You will be Fulani. See? If you are Bambara, okay, you take it. If you Compelli from Liberia, you run with that. You found out you're Wolof, you run with being Wolof. They will accept you for that. But if you waver back and forth, and stuff, and you don't want, like I see this in the Gambia and some other parts, like in Ghana and Nigeria and other parts, African Americans don't even want to be around other Africans. So why do you come here? I don't understand why many of us do this. But we have many African Americans who come to the continent. They go in their own communities, in a gated community, and stay away from the Africans. What is that? And then when they call you Tubab, you get upset. That's wrong. See, that's wrong. You should adopt and become, you're here in Africa, you become African. You settle the American part. Okay, you have American passport, but settle the African part as well. Once you settle that, you will be recognized as African. No one will call you Tubab. No one will call you any derogatory name of any sort. They will call you what you are. They'll say you're Compelli. Okay, yeah, you Compelli. Oh yeah, brother, you that. Or you Bambara. Oh man, you're Wolof, you Jolo. They'll tell you straight out. I'm Mendinka. They'll tell you. They'll say, yeah, you Mandinka. This is, now you've been accepted here on the continent. You have to work at that, brothers and sisters. You got to work at that in order to be successful here on this continent. Don't come over here, say I'm from LA, and you act like you from LA. They're going to call you Tubab. you're gonna be limited in your associations. Okay, so this is just word advice, because I've been here almost 2 decades now, almost 2 decades, and it's a process. You can't jump off the first year. It's a process, 1 year, 2 year process for you to get acclimated here. But you'll see the changes once you ask Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, please bless me, please help me to become, that of what I really am. And you're really Africans. The Americans, because you're born there, but you're really Africans, and adopt that. And that's the best for you, brothers and sisters. That's the best for you. And I wanted to, brothers and sisters, the next time you here, inshallah, I'm going to go through some of the names of the Messina group. And again, I will be closing. The Messina group, we have to talk about this, because this empire run from the 1300s to the 1800s on and off. And one of our Fulani groups is calling for the reestablishment of the Medina, emirate. They're calling for this again. And if you see in the right-hand corner of on the screen there, this is the proposal that they want. And so, again, we go back to this issue, brothers and sisters. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Mauritania, as you heard me talk about, the recap, is quiet because they learned to barter with the Mujahideen. Brothers and sisters, remember this. They're not going to go away. Don't listen to CNN or even the Pentagon or anybody else. These Mujahideen groups are not going away. They're going to be all the way until the real Mujahideen will come as the Prophet, and he will have an army that I suspect will probably be 1 million people. And they're going to take over on this earth. And you remember, under his reign, because he's going to be guided by Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, under his reign, all the injustices will disappear. More so that he'll be trying to give charity. There'll be no charity anywhere in the world to give, because everybody will be prosperous. This is coming. Okay? These Mujahideen groups are precursors. They're not going to be defeated. They're not going to be defeated, brothers and sisters. I won't listen to anything what anybody say, because the evidence tells me otherwise. They'll say this is terrorism. We talked about this before. It's not terrorism. Not terrorism. It's not terrorism. You caused this. You caused the jihad to come about. You should have left this alone. As you heard me say, the Messina empires, the sultanates they had an agreement where they had got they orchestrated establishment of codes of regulating cattle herding. This was going on for centuries, brothers and sisters. It was working in farmland communities. All of us know this. It was working for all these centuries. This code of conduct and regulation was working. Somebody broke this up. And now we have the jihad. Because when they went after the Futufula and they broke up this code, and this regulations, they started to take the land away, and then they start going to farmland. The farmland brothers begin to fight back. And this is what we have today. I was building you up to this point. We had established a code, of conduct between the cattle herding and farmlands. We had it, brothers, for centuries. It was working beautifully until somebody decided to pull the plug on it because of money and decided to go after and break this regulation up so that way it'd be pure fighting. And we have that today, brothers and sisters. We have that today. So I'll leave you with that until the next time, brothers and sisters. I will cover now deeper into this Messina history, which is very, very interesting. And I'll talk about, inshallah, about some names that are very significant to all the Fula people, because you should understand your antecedents, what happened, your ancestors. Why did they have certain names? These names have meanings and they meant something. I want to get into that because it will still, pride it. Because now when you hear talking about Fulani, it's either what? Cattle or jihad, fighting. But I want to talk about some history of our people, what happened before all of this disruption happened. And I want to get into that because our history is illustrious, very illustrious. Okay, brothers and sisters, thank you very much for showing up and those who will show up in the future. And I hope you stay tuned in a couple of days. Inshallah, I will bring up the second part of this. We get deep into the Messina group, and I'll break it down for you. And I'll talk about the empires and what happened in this region, and continue on about Mauritania, why it's so quiet. Until the next time, and so forth and so on. Okay, my brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.